Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you. We're going to begin today's policy session of the Phoenix City Council for May 3rd, 2016. We have a single item on today's agenda, but it's a really important one, a discussion by our city manager of what he is now proposing in the budget after the nearly 24 hearings around the city. But we're going to start today's meeting with council information and follow-up requests. And I'll turn to members of the council to see if they have any information or follow-up requests they'd like to provide to the community. Councilman Pastor, can you go first?
Yes, so excited. We're going to have a walk the Indian School Park this Saturday from May 7th from 8 to 10 a.m. And then on same day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. we're going to have the World Bazaar on 19th Avenue and Camelback at the Park and Ride. And then we're going to have a Light Rail Business Coalition meeting on Monday, May 9th from 2 to 3:30. And then Walk Phoenix Celebration at Encano Park, Tuesday, May 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. So hoping everybody can join us and excited to see everyone and be out in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for their participation. We had the bike safety and movie in the park at Deer Valley, and the following sponsors made it successful: Niagara Water, Safeway, Castles and Coasters, Wet and Wild, Black Mountain Community Alliance, the Deer Valley Neighborhood Park Block Watch, Canyon Corridor Community Alliance, Police, Fire, Streets, and the Parks Department. All of them worked together, and we had a great time. We had a lot of participation, and we had some beautiful decorated bikes. Good news, Green Earth, which we have been fighting for a couple of years, is cleared and closed. So thanks to all the staff that got together and legal that put them out of business. It took a long time, a lot of effort, but thank heavens they're gone. The young man and young woman from District 1 were Takesha Harris and Yash Patel, and Yash was also the overall Young Man of the Year, and I want to give them a big shout out and congratulations. And remind everybody that Cactus Park Coffee with a Cop is next Wednesday, 8 a.m. at Chickafill, 31st Avenue in Peoria, which is Metro Center. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Other members of the council, Councilman DeCiccio, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll keep it pretty quick. One, I want to give a special congratulations to those young men and women of the year. They received their awards last year, to Joshua Kaplan and Danielle Vermeer. It's outstanding work that they've done. They're just outstanding young citizens. You know how people our age generally criticize all the youth. Say, well, why aren't they doing that? Well, these are people that are doing the right things. They're out there involved in their community. They're doing great things in school, and they're giving back. And there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to these youth. Sometimes we forget about how hard they really work and how difficult it is even for some of the youth today. The second thing is there's Miracle Mile. I believe, Mayor, you're going to be there, and I think Councilman Pastor is going to be there. I can't remember if anyone else up here was going to be there, but they're going to be donating a big portion of their funds that they're going to be collecting between 12 and 8 o'clock on May 10th, Miracle Mile on 16th Street, to something called Feeding Matters, feeding the poor. So there will be a few of us over there helping them out in their grand opening, and hope to see you there. And if you have any questions, please give me a call. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. The best potato pancakes in the city of Phoenix, Miracle Mile.
Their food is amazing.
Other members of the council? Councilman Nowakowski, go Devils.
Thank you, Mayor. This past Saturday, we had our bike rodeo, and it turned out to be a great success. We had our first one was at Manuel Pena's school, and then we did it at the Dos Rios for lunch, and then we ended it with the Dia de los Niños celebration at the Food City right off of 7th Avenue in Southern. Turned out really good until it started hailing. Believe it or not, and it started hailing in April here in Phoenix, Arizona. Good turnout. Thank you for all those volunteers, all those individuals, and especially our staff that was out there teaching our young people how to ride their bikes, look through 2 different ways, and making sure that our car seats were put in properly in each of our cars. Also, I just want to give an update that mark your calendars for the Star Spangled Banner celebration on Friday, May 27th. It starts at 5 o'clock at Cesar Chavez. It's a celebration to honor all of our fallen police officers, firefighters, that have given the ultimate sacrifice in line of duty. It's a great celebration. It's a good way to give back to all those families that have sacrificed their loved ones. Also, we have a Heroes Lane that's going to be going down Baseline Road from about 35th Avenue to 51st Avenue. We're going to have banners of the fallen officers and firefighters with their name and the day of that they passed away. Also, we're looking at putting the Heroes Lane down Washington from about 7th Street to about 7th Avenue. So it'll be also a memory for all those that work in downtown to thank those police officers, thank those firefighters that put on that uniform on a daily basis and give up their lives for this community. I also want to thank Christopher, Joseph, and Joseph Olivas, that were the outstanding young men of District 7. Thank you all for all your hard work and being role models for those kids that you mentor in your schools. And lastly, the mayor and I had a great trip to Mexico City. We visit many companies out there, and one company in particular were actually Phoenix-based. It was a young man, Hector Plasencia, from Phoenix, Arizona, that started a plastic factory over there in Hermosillo, and they basically trade between Hermosillo and Phoenix, and they use Phoenix as their export to the rest of the country. So it's a great relationship. It just shows how the Sister Cities program and our trips to Mexico have really expanded business, not just for Hermosillo, but also for the residents here in Phoenix. And thank you, Mayor, for sitting down with the mayor of Hermosillo and creating a MOU between the two cities to grow and increase that economic development and that relationship. It's really, the mayor has, from day one, went out to Mexico City. I can't even name how many times, about 16 or so, right?
Getting there.
And basically really brought those businesses together and really helped grow the trade between Mexico and Phoenix and the United States. So thank you, Mayor, for all your efforts on that. And also this weekend, we're going to be celebrating Mother's Day Cinco de Mayo with a soccer tournament. We have about 215 teams that are going to be out at the West Phoenix Sports Complex, and there's going to be food, entertainment, and all kinds of good soccer games. So if you're out in the West Valley, right around 99th Avenue and right off of just south of Thomas, come on down. It's a free event, a great event, all kinds of goodies from Food Cities, one of the sponsors. They have all their vendors out there. The kids leave with bags full of goodies. So come on down, enjoy the music, and enjoy soccer, and enjoy the culture, and celebrate Cinco de Mayo with us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman Nowakowski. Thanks for joining me on a trip to our sister city of Hermosillo. And as you saw, the mayor himself greeted us off the airplane. We got to up our game here, I guess, when we greet delegations from around the world for our sister city program. Councilman Gates?
Thank you, Mayor. Great event last week with the Outstanding Young Man and Young Woman program, and our District 3 winners were Mariah Irving and Brett Buddy. Really an incredible group of young people, very inspiring. I want to thank the Sunny Slope Kiwanis for inviting me to their dinner in the desert last Friday night that was held at Valley Life, and Councilor Nowakowski was talking about the weather. A lot of wind out there, but a great event, great food, and always fun to spend time in Sunny Slope. We have the National Day of Prayer is coming up on Thursday, May 5th, and that will be observed at the Arizona State Capitol in the Senate lawn from noon to 1 p.m. Also, more development coming in District 3. Monday, May 9th, we'll have a groundbreaking at 8:45 a.m. at 7th Street in Roberts. That's near 7th Street in Thunderbird. This is a new residential development right across from the newly renovated Safeway. Also on Wednesday, May 11th, the USO Arizona Military Entrance Processing Station is having a grand opening and ribbon cutting. I'll be at that at 2800 North Central Avenue. We also have the May Coffee Chat coming up on Thursday, May 19th. That'll be from 7:30 to 9 in the morning, and we'll be over there with our friends at the Rock at 32nd Street, one of the great successes along the North 32nd corridor. So I hope you can all join us for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman Gates. Councilman Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to announce that our next VIP, Violence Impact Project meeting, will be held on May 11th at the Helen Drake Senior Center at 6 p.m. This has been a great success story. What gave us the idea is, you may remember, and we're still gaining ground on this, but Van Buren really had many issues several years ago, and though it's not Disneyland today, we've come a long way, and we're really moving in the right direction. A lot of the crime found its way to 27th Avenue, frankly, and it took a multifaceted effort from 13 city departments, including our fire department, police department, public works, and everyone else, along with our clergy, nonprofits, business leaders, and together we've created the Violence Impact Project. And though we have a lot more work to do, crime rates are down by about 30% in this area. So the next meeting is on May 11th. Soon we'll be kicking off the next Violence Impact Project further west in the district, and we're looking forward to that. I want to thank GCU for graciously helping to host our quarterly Neighborhood Leaders Summit for District 5. And notice in the audience we have Rex and Suzanne Thrain, who are both here, who both made it out to the summit, and thank you so much for your leadership in our neighborhoods and our district and for the city. And I really would like to thank all of the neighborhood leaders who came out. We spent about 3 hours together and really talked about the district, a lot of the things that we were able to accomplish together, and frankly, a vision for what we want to accomplish moving forward. And we have a lot of selfless neighborhood leaders in District 5. The conversation was more than just the district, if I recall. It was about just moving forward together, which was really refreshing. And I want to thank our city manager, Mr. Zerker, who was there, as well as, and I want to read the names because because it means a lot to all of us that people came out on a Saturday. But Ray Dovalina, Monica Hernandez, Joe Bauer, Megan Casey, Linda Dodd, Fernando Felix, Commander Robinson, Lieutenant Consolian, and Commander Connolly. I want to thank all of you for coming out and for representing the city of Phoenix so well, and for being right in the heart of District 5 there, in the center of District 5 over at GCU. I would like to acknowledge one of our own. Now, every year, there's something special that happens. Many special things happen in Boston, but, namely the Boston Marathon. And it's not just the marathon, it's something that you actually have to qualify for. And Tim Merritt, who all of us on the council know pretty well, because Tim, for a while, was a management assistant working with our own Penny Perella on the 11th floor, and now is with Parks. Tim competed just 2 days ago, I believe, in Eugene, Oregon, and he ran pretty fast and actually qualified for the Boston Marathon for 2017. So Tim will be among several Phoenicians representing Phoenix for the Boston Marathon, and it's great that we have a city employee who is just, and if you know Tim, you would never, he would be petrified if he knew that I was doing this, right? So if you see Tim out there, congratulate him. Don't pat him too hard on the back. I'm sure he's going to be pretty sore for the next few days, but congratulations to Tim Merritt on his major accomplishment, and we'll be watching when he's competing in Boston. Lastly, I would mention that recently I had the opportunity to serve on a panel as a guest judge for the Grand Canyon University Canyon Challenge. So it's our version of the Shark Tank. And the other judges were Brian Mueller, the president and CEO of GCU, Lori Sokup, Brad Janenga, who's a good friend of all of ours, and Sheldon Harris. And we judged 5 different teams of entrepreneurs. And man, I got to tell you, I was just so impressed, the ideas that have come forth. Now, these teams, all 5 of them, had to qualify to get to this stage. So this was the cream of the crop. The winners of this challenge and $10,000 seed money to help start their venture is an organization called Raffle Boss. The 2 students, Eric Roman, who attends St. Mary's University out in San Antonio, and Catalina Insunza, who attends GCU, both of which are District 5 Maryville kids who attended Trevor Brown High School. So I'm incredibly proud. And of course, I didn't know that before I was judging. I just want everyone to know that. But I was proud of all of these students, and this is happening right here in the city of Phoenix. All of these great entrepreneurs that are fabricating their ideas and shaping and molding them, and you can hear just the energy that they are putting into their ideas. So, you know, GCU is doing a lot of really great things out of the Colangelo School of Business to teach these students, again, not only how to shape and mold this idea, but how you create this pitch for your business and how you actually compete, and in Eric and Catalina's case, how you win $10,000 to start your venture. So congratulations to all of our students, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Valenzuela. Any other members of the council? All right. I'll just say that today is National Teachers Day, and I just want to say on behalf of every member of this council and the city, thank you to every single person who may be watching or watching at another time. Thank you for choosing a career in education. It is well documented that our city manager, if he had chosen a different career, would have been a teacher. You just got done with labor negotiations. Do you wish you had chosen the other profession right about now? You don't have to answer that. No, to my sister Maria, who has been a teacher, special education teacher at Spatolny in the Cartwright District in District 7, and my brother Paul, who was a teacher in Alhambra and Deer Valley and now is superintendent of Wash Elementary, and all teachers across this community, thank you for what you do. We owe you a huge debt of gratitude. None of you do it for the money. We all know that. And you are appreciated, and we need to do more to show our appreciation for our teachers. So happy National Teachers Day to all the teachers across our city. All right, with that, we're going to move on to the rest of our agenda. Mr. City Manager, do we have a consent agenda today? No consent agenda. Do we have a call for an executive session? Councilman Valenzuela?
Mayor, in accordance with the properly posted notice and agenda, I move that the City Council, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes Section 38-431.02.A, meet in executive session on Tuesday, May 10th, 2016 at 2 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor of the Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington Street, Phoenix, Arizona.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda is any reports by our city manager. Mr. City Manager, any reports before we discuss the budget?
Mayor, no, we're ready to go straight to the budget.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is item number 2. Item number 2 will be a discussion of the city manager's proposed 2016-17 budget. For a quick review, for folks who are obviously in the audience and watching, you're very active citizens. You pay close attention to what's going on here at City Hall. City manager, I guess a couple months ago now, had proposed an original budget. We took that budget on the road, led by the members of the City Council. We had, I think, 20 or so budget hearings across the city, received a significant amount of input, compliments, some critiques. City management was there to listen. The elected officials were there to listen and have provided some additional input to our city manager. And now he's here to provide his second bite at the apple, if you will, his second proposed 2016 budget after hearing that public input. We're not going to vote on this today. There will be another opportunity for the public to come before this council when we vote. What date will that be, Mr. City Manager?
May 17th.
May 17th will be our vote by this city council. There will be opportunity for additional public input at the time. Obviously, the budget is not adopted until the mayor and council adopt it. But with that as a setup, Mr. City Manager, your proposed 2016-17 budget.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for that introduction, Mayor. And I want to thank all the members of the council for hosting public hearings and encouraging feedback on the 2016-17 budget, as you said. Many of you said in your meetings that the trial budget presented to the community always changes based on community input, and you are right. this budget has changed, and we want to go over those changes, some of which actually occurred since this report was printed on Thursday. As you noted, we reached tentative agreement with our labor groups, and so that has changed a couple things, and we'll go over that. Mr. Barton from the Budget and Research Department will do that. I believe the proposed budget reflects public input and provides a balanced approach to our debt service requirements, long-term financial stability, quality of life, and recognition of the hard work of our employees. We have a budget process that is as open and transparent as any you will find in Arizona or in the country in big cities. And so I want to thank you all for that, because that really reflects your values of how we do a budget. We had great participation from the public in person, on Phoenix TV, online. Every hearing was carried on Phoenix 11 and also shown on a YouTube channel. We received more than 500 comments with over 350 unduplicated participants in the hearings alone. We also had 2 new locations this year. Mayor, thank you for hosting us with the Pilgrim Rest Church in Eastlake, and Councilman Olkowski for introducing us to Country Place Elementary School, 2 new locations for us this year. So what we heard at these hearings, with more than 500 comments, the public comments focused on, in big picture, these issues. For one, I would say our residents value our services and the employees who provide those services. The public safety was very critical. And the services, quality of life services like the library, youth programming, funding for arts, public art maintenance, which we'll talk about a little bit, homeless services, street maintenance, and community centers and senior programs. The comments were that the added revenue we seek through property tax, about $4.25 a month, is worth it. Residents advocated for restoring pay to employees. They advocated that our community needs more youth programming and public safety. And since Suzanne Thrain is sitting here looking at me, I will say the two are connected. She made that point several times, but it's true. Public safety, youth programs are connected. Mixed reviews of body cameras were given to us, especially if it pushed out money for restoration or for hiring officers, and we do have some conversation about that. And there was lots of conversation about programming in libraries, parks, streets, and arts. As it relates to the budget, option 1 was the proposal from the manager's trial budget, which was to raise property taxes in order to pay debt service. And that got the overwhelming amount of comments from those who indicated a preference for option 1. Option 2 was other sources of revenue rather than property taxes. So 97% of those who expressed a preference out of about 100 who did so expressed a preference for option 1 or option 2.
Mr. City Manager, that may leave, I don't want to leave any confusion. Obviously, many more people than that attended our budget hearings provided input. So when you say number of supporters, what does that number represent?
The Budget and Research Department tracked the comments, and those people who expressly said, I support option 1, option 2, 3, 4, 5, this was the number. So 350 people spoke. About a third of those specifically addressed the options, and this is the breakdown of those folks.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask
You have a question about that?
specifically about
Please.
this? 500, didn't last year, didn't we have like 2,000?
I don't think it was
I-
last year. It might have
I could
been
be
2
wrong.
year ago. We might have had that many.
Okay, all right, so it was 2 years
Last
ago.
year wasn't this many.
There were comments, I know at my meeting, maybe at others as well, about the times of the meetings. I hadn't realized there used to be daytime meetings. I've always done mine at night, but just next year you guys are going to, I want to make sure that wasn't, people didn't come because we were doing the meetings all at night.
We heard that feedback, and so next year we want to try to identify one that can attract our senior center residents, and also see if we can do a morning meeting, like a breakfast meeting we've sometimes done in the past, and have those spread more than just the 6 p.m. starts.
Sounds like that's what people wanted, so
Yes,
that would help
I
boost the
agree.
numbers from 500. We are a city of 1.5 million people.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
So just as a reminder, option 1 was based on our need to close the gap between our property tax levy of $1.82 and our need to preserve services and pay our debt service for the capital programs that we have. That gap is $37 million. And so the option 1 talked about that. And so part of our property tax goes to services, the things that we all value and support, public safety, parks, youth programming. It also supports debt service on capital projects that are important to the community, like storm drainage and control, development of parks, building our libraries, and many other facilities. As I mentioned, and as we've talked about extensively, our property tax rate in the city of Phoenix has been a constant $1.82 since 1995. And this chart, what this chart shows is in 2005-06 is the first year we show this, a growing amount of property tax raised at $1.82, basically following our property values. So over those 21 years, property value growth and just the growth of the city meant that $1.82 collected enough revenue to support our needs. Then in 2010, when the property crash affected property values, $1.82 started collecting much less. And so as it moves to the right, the bars drop. And our valuation actually dropped 47% between 2010 and 2013. So as a result, we had to use our debt service reserve to make our debt service payments. As I've said, this is probably the best kept secret in Phoenix, is that the city council gave $225 million of tax relief to our resident taxpayers over the last 6 years. That's what the green represents on this chart, the amount that we paid from the debt service reserve rather than levying in property taxes. But like all great things, the property tax reserve fund has come to its conclusion. And so we approached the low point needed to maintain our bond rating, and we were faced with a choice of how to continue to responsibly pay our debt and provide our services. And the chart shows this tax relief. What did other Valley cities do? Well, they floated their rate more than we did. Only Phoenix and Peoria, of the cities we studied, kept a constant tax rate. What this chart shows that in 2010, the amount levied by the city of Phoenix was $284 million in property taxes. In 2015-16, $1.82 levied $192 million. That gap is what we have to address. And we were addressing that with the reserve fund, which is now at its low point. We also talked about the fact that that change, that decrease, was the greatest among our peer cities in the valley. If you look at the chart, that column with red numbers shows our levy decreased by 32%. That's the greatest decrease in property taxes among all these jurisdictions listed. And then when we looked at what that meant on a per capita basis, we were sort of middle of the pack, $133 of property tax levied per capita in the city of Phoenix is how that worked out, as compared to the high of Scottsdale of $270, almost $275. We took another look at total tax burden. Well, I'm sorry, we'll get to that in just a second. What did it do for the property tax for an average Phoenix resident? The far left is 2008, 2009. That was the high point of property values. And so $1.82 translated to a $407 City of Phoenix property tax bill for the typical Phoenix home, the median right there in the middle of single-family residential. And as property values declined, that dropped to a low of $217 for a typical home in 2013-14. 2015-16, it was $249 for a Phoenix tax bill. And if we stayed at $1.82, it would grow to $263 this year. But the property tax increase, we're recommending 35 cents to raise $37 million to pay our debt service, takes our tax rate to $217, and that would raise $314 from the typical Phoenix single-family residence. If you just look back in time, that is still less than a typical residence was paying in 2010, 2009, and 2008. And that adds to a tax relief of over $290 given by the City Council. That increase between $1.82 and $217 translates to about $50 a month for the typical home, about $4.25 per month. And what we heard from those who expressed an opinion was, this is worth it. Finally, we took a look at just to see what does our tax collection burden look like on a per capita basis with other Valley cities. So what this does is it takes all general city taxes, sales taxes, assessments on water bills, those sorts of things, property taxes, and says per person, what does that look like? And as you can see, again, Phoenix is right there in the middle of the other valley cities. Even with the change in the tax rate from $1.82 to $2.17, that's what happens in terms of the per capita tax burden, tax collection per resident. So we just wanted to illustrate that. So with that in mind, we go to the budget, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Barton here. The city manager's proposed budget for your review, and ultimately, as you said, Mayor, the council does need to vote on this, assumes debt service is addressed with a property tax increase, 35 cents, about $4.25 a month on the typical Phoenix single-family resident. It restores employee compensation over a 3-year period. Those were the tentative agreements we signed, which the unions are taking to ratification now and which we brought for your action on May 17th. And it provides services, restorations, and some additions to the community that we heard were very important. So with that, I'll turn over to Mr. Barton, who will walk us through the budget.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for this opportunity. Again, we're here to represent or present to you the proposed budget. Largely, as the city manager has explained, the proposed budget reflects option number 1 from the trial budget. So what does that mean to us? It means primarily, again, that the general fund programs and services that we rely on are not reduced, that our citizens keep their services. It also assumes that we are able to make some minor critical adjustments to services. We can add to public safety. We can also make some additions based on the feedback that we heard from the community at our community budget hearings. It also means that our employee compensation can be restored. Again, there is a slight change from what was actually in the printed report, and you have in front of you a new attachment A. We'll go over that a little bit in more detail as we progress through this presentation. But again, it allows us to restore employee compensation based on the agreements that were recently signed over the course of 3 fiscal years. It also, again, as the city manager talked about, we're assuming that our property taxes are increased by 35 cents, going from $1.82 to $2.17. With that increase, the average residential home will go from $263 a year, City of Phoenix tax bill, to roughly $314, $51 a year, or $4.25, as the city manager reflected. So at that combined rate of $2.17, the average property tax bill for the City of Phoenix, average residential property, would go to $314 for fiscal year 16-17. That is still almost $100 less than our property tax bills were at the peak at 2008-2009 of $407. We also, again, based on the presentation that we gave at trial budget, as well as the expertise of our CFO, we feel that option number 1 and what's being proposed in this trial budget would be credit positive from the rating agency perspective. As we've discussed with you at length over the last couple of months, we anticipate or we are expecting a $60 million general fund surplus. That surplus provides us with the resources that we need to address critical public safety needs, the employee compensation over the course of the next couple of years, as well as the needs of the community based on the feedback that we heard at the community budget hearings. So what's changed? So what I'm going to go over with you now at a high level are the changes from the trial budget. So first and foremost, what we're talking about, there we go. So number 1, the body cameras. As the city manager referenced, there was a lot of mixed reviews about body cameras at the budget hearings. What we're proposing now, and this is based on some of the feedback that we've gotten from the hearings, as well as some of the in-depth conversations that we've had with the police department, we're recommending now that body cameras be implemented over 5 years instead of 3. We think that we're still making that same commitment to the community to implement body cameras. We think that's important. But what we think we gain by extending that over 5 years are several things. Number 1, I think it allows us to really take into account the study and the results of the study that ASU is really putting forward. We also think that it allows us to actually get our hands around how the policies and procedures of body cameras are really going to work. How's that going to be deployed? In the first year, we'll really focus on adding a few staff, getting them trained up, getting the procedures worked out, as well as really getting our hands around what are the costs really going to be, looking at the different vendors, looking at the options. We also feel that it makes a lot more sense to really not rush into this, especially given where PD is with RMS implementation. We think it, give us a little more time to get that technology really fully integrated into the department before we implement yet another technology into the police department. But by extending this over the course of 5 years versus 3, it gives us the resources that we need to make the adjustments to the compensation that we are now talking about. So again, employee compensation restoration, now over 3 years. What was presented in the trial budget was a partial restoration of roughly 2.6% over 2 years and staying there. But now we know, based on the signatures that we've gotten on our new MOUs, based on the hard work of our HR department and specifically Cindy Bezery, Blair Johnson, and their team, we now got employee compensation solved over the next 3 years for full restoration at 4.2%. What was in the trial budget, again, was 1.6% in year 1 and a second year of 1%. We know now that the contracts that were signed are essentially 1.9% and 1%. So that's a 0.3% difference over the first 2 years. That equates to $6 million. We've basically been able to carve that $6 million out of body cameras to make it net neutral to the budget that we're proposing today. We also, based on the hard work of our esteemed CFO, Denise Olson, and our bond rating, we were actually able to reduce the annual debt service cost of North Mountain. If you remember in the trial budget, the North Mountain project was essentially $1 million a year annual debt service. But based on the work of Denise and our credit rating, we were able to drop that down by about $285,000 a year. With that savings of $285,000, it allowed the city manager to really address some of the feedback that we got from the community budget hearings, and it allows us to address youth, arts, homelessness, and economic development specifically. And we'll go into detail behind each of those over the next few slides. So this slide, again, this is something we showed to you at trial budget time on March 22nd. The first 3 items on this slide are unchanged from trial budget. They stay the same. So EPCR, the Electronic Patient Record System, Employee Assistance and Wellness Program, and the Security Training and Notification System, they are as they were at the trial budget. No modifications, no changes. However, body cameras, as we've talked about, we initially in the trial budget had an $11.4 million set aside for that 3-year implementation. Now we've reduced that by $6 million, so you see a $5.4 million set aside for that. And the final change is the $285,000 annual debt service change to North Mountain Radio Project. We've long said that our employees are our greatest asset. We are a service industry, and what we rely on are the services of our employees. The community loves our employees. They value their services. And based, again, on the hard work of staff over these last few months, as well as the work of our labor units, as we've come to the table and bargained in good faith, we've come to an agreement of 4.2% over the next 3 fiscal years. The first 2 years of that essentially cost us about $20 million or $50 million. We've got that allocated and reserved in this budget based on the $60 million surplus. So $50 million of that $60 million surplus will be set aside for employee compensation. And then, again, this was the category that we heard a lot about at the community, partial restoration of prior cuts and expanded services. Like the police, community, public safety enhancements, the first 3 items on this slide are essentially the exact same as they were at trial budget. No modifications to the electronic media for library, blight maintenance for streets, or air quality specialists. Those stay as they were at trial budget time. However, based on the feedback, many of you attended all these hearings. At each hearing, we had someone representing and discussing the impact of chronic homelessness. So with that $285,000, we were able to carve out $25,000 to provide additional funding for CAS. This $25,000 to CAS increases general fund support of CAS up to 89% of what the peak funding was to CAS at the height of the general fund support. We also heard, again, about the benefits of art. Initially in the trial budget, the arts grants program was being increased by $50,000. This takes them up to about $60,000 instead of the $50,000. That restores about 94% of peak support from the general fund of the arts program. We also heard that while it's great to have great arts grant programming, it's also a great benefit to ensure that we maintain that fabulous public art that we have. So what we're doing here is increasing public arts maintenance by $25,000. That is a 51% increase over the current service level for public art maintenance. And finally, Loop 202, Lavina Estrella Mountain. What we're doing here is really trying to encourage advanced manufacturing program development. So we're really looking to work with CED to foster growth and economic development along that corridor of the 202. This will be something that Chris Mackey and her group will work tirelessly on. She's a proven benefit in this area. Look what she did for Chandler as it pertains to high manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. We're expecting the same thing out of her for this. And finally, support for youth and veterans. Again, first three items on this remain untouched or unchanged from the trial budget. We'll continue our support for veterans and homelessness and entrepreneurship, as well as the operating costs for Chavez Park. But what we are changing is the Disengaged Youth Program. If you remember in the trial budget, we had a $150,000 allocation for this particular program. Based on the feedback, based on the testimony of our residents, based on the testimony at the youth, at our youth budget hearing, we're increasing this by $50,000, so it's increasing to $200,000. What we're able to do with this $200,000 is really focus on some things that are really important. Access to technology, access to that disengaged youth to ensure that they have somewhere to go and don't become a statistic in our public safety environment. So they're going to be working on coding, STEM and STEAM transition and programming. We also added an additional $50,000 for library, and we're hoping that these two programs will dovetail. We hope that with Parks and the library that they can work together collectively to get that coding out there, to get the STEAM and STEM projects out there, as well as help this disengaged youth, this target audience, really work at resume building and some other job skills type training to really get them into the workplace. So those are the changes to the trial budget that we are proposing in the manager's proposed budget. As he's mentioned, the city manager's mentioned, we have a very transparent process. Again, this is our calendar. This all started on March 22nd with the trial budget. Over the 3 weeks from March 28th through April 19th, we had a series of 15 community budget hearings that you hosted. We also did probably 12 to 15 other small, intimate, more intimate setting budget hearings for select audiences. We're presenting to you now the proposed budget. You'll come back with your action and your decision on May 17th. We'll follow that up with all of the legal requirements on June 1st, June 15th, and July 7th and July 1st. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the city manager.
Mayor, that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions or feedback and hear from you and from the public. Thank you so much.
All right, I do have a few cards. Councilman Waring, you want to go, and then I'll take cards from members of the public who are here, and then turn it back over to council members for questions or comments. Councilman Waring.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Ed, Jeff, it says page 21, but I think it's actually slide 20, changes from the trial budget. Start to the top, proposed changes. Okay. So the first thing is the body cameras. You said something that was kind of curious to me about the ASU study. Is the ASU study done?
Mayor, Councilman Waring, what we have is we are one of 3 agencies in the United States that are part of a Department of Justice grant that includes a study. And so the ASU component of that is not completed yet. It is underway. What that's going to do is to help us identify best practices and best technologies as we move forward with the program.
It just seems like the ASU study has been sort of at least one leg of the stool about why we're going to do body cameras or the need for body cameras right now, but it's not done. It was referenced by Jeff as a reason why we're now extending the body camera implementation out 5 years rather than 3. That's a pretty long time horizon. I have no doubt the cameras probably impact behavior and make a difference, but it's a lot of money, about $11.4 million. So that price is the same, it's just spread over 5 years rather than 3. And
that's
for that,
correct.
Yeah, so that price is about 100 police officers we could hire instead, if that's the way it worked out.
Well, the $11 million, if it were ongoing $11 million, would be about 100 officers, but it's really a $5 million annual cost, which is probably of the value of about 45 police officers.
So it's 11 million, because there was a nice article about it in the paper today. Most of the cost, well, I don't know now that I hear that. It was my interpretation that the cameras themselves weren't that expensive, so that wasn't the cost. You don't have to buy a camera every day or every year. It's not ongoing now. You probably upgrade it you guys probably know, 3 or 4 years or however long it takes, however long they last. They probably get a lot of wear and tear. But, so it's 11 million over 3 years, and then every subsequent year it's going to be $5 million. So it's more like 50 officers ongoing. So you could, for the cost of this, you could hire 50 officers and keep them in perpetuity, given a stable economy, and then you could also give some pay raises. If you want, if you deal with the body cameras
yes.
altogether. I mean,
that,
that's a
that
fair
money,
statement,
of
right?
course, can be appropriated as the council wants to. $5 million on an ongoing basis is probably the cost of about 40 officers on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
What you wouldn't have, however, is what's an effective tool for police officers in serving the community. And that's what the recommendation is, based on what Chief Yonner has said is important in him building a police department that's fully engaged with the community, and I believe that to be the case and to be true as well.
And I'm not arguing that the cameras aren't important. We've talked about that. In a perfect world, obviously, we'd be doing both, hiring officers. Some of my colleagues have mentioned this in the past. I think specifically Michael and Sal. Correct me if I'm misquoting. But I agree with the premise that we'd be better off hiring officers at this price tag rather than doing the cameras. You know, the camera costs might come down. I know a lot of it's personnel costs to review the film and so forth. It just seems like that's a lot of people who I guess are going to be hired, or experts that are going to be consulted to redact the information and so forth. It just seems like I'd rather see more officers. I think that's what I'd hear if I don't remember quite the definitive feedback about it at the two budget meetings that we held. That it sounds like maybe was heard elsewhere based on what I've heard from some of my colleagues and read in the paper. But I definitely think, I know what I'd prefer, so I have some issue with that. Moving down to employee restoration over 3 years, we had issues with this, pretty substantial ones a couple of years ago about projections on the economy and so forth. We've been way off in the past. I think you guys are doing a better job, for sure. I think we've tightened things up and looked at the surrounding communities and done a whole host of things that we've discussed at previous meetings. But I think I'm safe in saying the projections 3 years out aren't nearly as accurate as they are for tomorrow or a year from now. Jeff, is that a fair statement?
That is a fair assessment, Councilman.
But we're going to have these contracts, no matter what, for an extra year, which I understand what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to do the restoration. At the same time, you didn't feel like you could do it within 2 years. But that just seems a little dicey. Is there any protection for taxpayers? Maybe you can talk about that. If things go south in that third year, at that point, we'll be in what, year 10, Jeff, since the end of the last recession?
That is correct.
Doesn't feel like that. I know to a lot of people, but economists, from the date that they point to, I think that at that point it'll be about 10 years.
Correct.
Seems like we'd be due for another recession somewhere in those 3 years. I don't want to jinx it, but is there anything in there that this wouldn't be guaranteed, or, what would we do if the economy went south?
So Mayor, Councilman Waring, as you know, when you sign a contract, you're locked in, and that's part of the negotiation. Yep, that's part of the negotiation of the contract. One thing I would say about this is, first of all, we've never pre-funded 2 years of a contract, which is what we're doing now. So this budget actually pre-funds next year and the following year of the contract, and that's something we've never done. So that in itself provides us that 2 years of protection. And what I would say is, if the economy goes that far south in the third year, we'll have to do what we did in 2007, 2008, 2009, and roll up our sleeves in the moment with the data at hand and come to an arrangement with our employees as to what it is we can do. We are going to accept that challenge as management, that third year we have to work hard towards that. And our employees have said they want to work with us to continue to identify savings for an ongoing budget, for the benefit of the ongoing budget. Just one thing I want to just go back to too. We are hiring police officers. So in this current year, the council's authorized hiring 300 police officers, and the police department is fully engaged in that. And there's an additional 145 officers authorized for 16-17. So we are continuing to hire even as we go through this time.
I want to take your last point first, but we could hire, it's great that we're hiring officers, we're still short. We could hire 40 more under my plan not to do the cameras. And you'd still have for the next, so how much money would you have left over then the next 3 years? Because it's 11 million over 3 years, right?
If the council chose to do something, they could choose to do with the body camera money to do something else. That $6.4 million in the budget would fund some number of police officers if that's what the council chose.
And then there'd still be some money left to distribute among officers for pay raises as well.
Well, all this budget allocates is 5.4, I apologize. This budget allocates 5.4 for the next 2 years for
So I'm
body
sorry,
cameras.
so 5.4 million funds 40 officers.
On an ongoing
Okay,
basis.
so you're choosing, I'm just trying to figure out what you could have 40 officers, or you could have the body cameras this coming fiscal year.
5.4 million in the budget this year. If that's what the council want to do, it could fund 40 more officers if we can find them, or it could fund a body camera program.
And with the body camera program, you could have those 40 officers, not just for next year, and then you got to scrounge to find the money. You could have 40 officers really in perpetuity, like I said, assuming economic projections and so forth all pan out. I mean, that's a true statement.
Assuming that
right?
5.4 million were ongoing, yes.
Back to the employee restoration over 3 years. Obviously, 2-year contracts are risky. Things can go south in a 2-year period, as you guys found to your chagrin before I got on the council. 3 years just heightens the risk. As far as I'm concerned, this is signing up taxpayers for more risk by doing the 3-year contracts, for sure, with no real way, as you said, a contract's a contract with no real way to extricate, without, I guess, concessions or something. That makes me frankly a little nervous. As I look at the budget presentation, really taxes are being raised and more money is being spent. So not debating the merits of the new programs and so forth, there is new spending, there are definitely new programs, there are pay raises. Taxes are being raised for pay raises and new programs. The body cameras might be a great thing, but it is a new program, and it's being coupled with tax increases. That is also certainly a concern. I wish that wasn't that seemed like it was the first thing that came to everybody's mind, and it sounds like that's the way it's going to go. But within that, assuming the tax increase is going to be passed by this council, I do hope that people look at some of these things like the trade-off between body cameras for police officers, and I would hope that will be discussed at our next meeting as well, and that citizens watching this right now will weigh in. I feel strongly about it. Doesn't mean that's the right answer. I know what you mean. Perhaps we'll have fewer lawsuits, maybe citizens and police officers interacting, that'll go smoother than maybe it has in the past. But it sounds like the ASU study isn't done, so we don't know that for sure. Is that also a fair statement?
Well, I think the ASU
Maybe there's other studies, I guess
The
that's
ASU study is evaluating the impact of body cameras on police officer behavior, police officer interaction with the public.
But it's not done yet, so you don't really know unless there's some other study. I mean, if they head off one unfortunate incident that costs us a lot of money, then we might recoup the money right away, but we don't know that that's going to be the case.
We have done one study, I believe, with ASU previous to this that did prove a correlation between body cameras and better outcomes from police officers in their interactions. The second study is connected to the Department of Justice grant, and it will further that review. We currently will have with this grant about 250 body cameras on the street in Phoenix, and that's what the study will be reviewing, is gauging those 250 cameras versus 250 officers who don't have the cameras and making some assumptions about them.
And that's going to be finished when?
I'm not sure. It's going to be in the next year.
I guess I was just thinking, is it going to be done in time for the next fiscal year, or?
My understanding is it should be done by then. I would say, though, body cameras are not...
But we're committing to it right now.
Councilman Warren,
This would be it. So.
Are you going to make a point? I mean, obviously, a lot of the council.
I think I am, but thanks for interrupting.
Make your point, and then we can move on. So
that
we have public, a member of the council that would also like the opportunity to provide input on the budget. I think you've made your point, but if you want to make a final point, please go right ahead and do so.
I thought I was just asking questions,
Excellent.
but
My take on it is that the body camera, as the ASU study showed, the body cameras do change behaviors of individuals as they interact with police officers. That changed behavior inures to the benefit of the police officer. It makes the job of a Phoenix police officer safer. So in addition to liability savings, et cetera, we could save lives with this investment in body cameras. We could save police officer lives with his investment in body cameras. We're going to continue to study to make sure we're engaging at the very, very best practices. I did want to note that the estimate of the cost is just an estimate. We haven't gone to market, and we may still be able to get the full implementation of body cameras within that 3-year period. We'll see. once we do the RFP and find out what the marketplace really bears. This was really Jeff and other professionals' best estimate is what they think the cost of those body cameras would be within that set period of time. Obviously, this council can vote whatever we want to vote. If we want to speed it up, that'll be our decision. If we want to slow it down or get rid of it completely, that will certainly be our decision as
We will
as
also, Mayor,
well.
continue to seek grants to supplement the body camera program as well. The council just a couple weeks ago approved submitting a grant to the Gila River Indian community.
Sure.
We're going to continue to find those
We should be as creative as possible, but obviously the fundamental issue is whether getting every single police officer who's on the streets fitted with a body camera for his or her own safety as well as the safety of the public is a good investment by this council. That's going to be a very important choice that this council has to make. Councilman Pastor, do you have a question?
I wasn't done.
Okay, well, I'm
I
going to
had
move to
the
Councilman
floor.
Pastor. I'll come back. You'll have full opportunity. Obviously, we have
Mayor,
nine-
you're going to shut him down? If you don't like what
This
they're
was an
saying,
important-
then don't shut them down,
Councilman
Mayor.
DeCiccio, I'm not gonna-
You've done
I'm gonna-
this to me, you've done it to others.
Councilman
If you
DeCiccio.
don't like what people have to say, you should
Councilman
have to say
DeCiccio.
that. I think it's
Councilman
what you're
DeCiccio, I'm
seeing
not gonna shut
across
him down.
the country right now.
Hey,
People
Council-
from the left are shutting down other ideas, and I think it's inappropriate.
All right, I appreciate your thought on that. I'm not going to shut down
Not a
Councilman
thought, it's a
Councilman
statement. I don't think Councilman
Councilman
Warren was done
DeCiccio,
with the floor.
The floor is now with Councilman Pastor. Councilman
Well,
Pastor.
he's shut down then.
Councilman Pastor, the floor is yours, and then we'll go back to we have members of the public wish to speak, and we'll have plenty of council members, additional time for council members. Councilman Pastor actually has to leave the meeting and would like the opportunity to speak and say her thoughts or comments before, and then I'll get back for Councilman DeCiccio's
Well, that would have been appropriate to bring
Councilman
up at the
Waring's
beginning, Mayor.
cross-examination. Thank you very much, Councilman DeCiccio. I am chair of the meeting. I'm handing it over to Councilman Pastor. She has the floor.
Okay. So I have to leave the meeting early. I will be on the phone. It's a championship baseball game of my son. I feel like a guilty mom due to the fact that he said to me, "Mom, you've only been to one game this season, so I'm going to make it today." So just putting it out there for everybody. I just want to get something clear. My understanding, and I think I'm very clear on my understanding, is that we are restoring pay. These are not pay raises.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, yes, 4.2% restores employee compensation back to a level it was in 2010.
So this is compensation that during 2010, during our budget crisis, employees sacrificed their
Mayor's
pay.
asking me right now, interrupting, I'm sorry, if I'm his protector, I'm not. I'm just saying that it's an opportunity for him to be able to speak.
Well, now you're interrupting me, and now this is, I mean, I don't want to play this game.
Councilman Pastor, the
So-
floor is yours, and the conversation over here was off mic. Councilman Pastor, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm sorry. And so I just want to be clear that it's restorations, that the employee group sacrificed in 2010 their pay in order to help the city.
Councilman
And
Pastor,
along
that's
with
correct.
also residents. And so we band together and made sure that our city was at the point that we needed to be and provide the services that we could at that time. The other key piece is what I heard during the budget hearings was that we needed more police officers on the ground. But I also heard from the community that we needed trust within our community with our officers, and we wanted, that they wanted also body cameras. And so I think there's a happy medium or compromise that we can do as a city in listening to our citizens, because I heard both remarks. In addition to that, we were being proactive, or I commend you, Ed, for being proactive during a time that we were seeing things nationally happening within communities regarding behavior in the community. And you were very proactive by forming a group, the Community Police Trust Initiative. And we asked citizens to volunteer and participate and really, for a year, do research and study what some of those key points were that were needed in the community and how could we rebuild trust. And so one of them was, my understanding, the body cameras. And so I think we could, knowing that we're going to hire 445 officers, knowing that, and I hope we hire them faster. I understand the rigor of it. But we will have 445 officers within the next 3 years. Is my understanding?
445 would be the number this year and next year, and then there's an additional number in that third year.
Okay, okay. So we are doing our best to making sure that their qualified officers are in our community, but I think it's also our responsibility to make sure there's community trust within our public safety. And so I think this meets a happy balance, and that's all, I think you did a great job in trying to figure it all out and hearing all the community and residents as to what is the need of our area. So moving to that is, and I think it goes hand in hand, and the left and the right, we all can work together, that additional funding or funding for programming for youth is very important because there is research shown that it does deter them from negative behavior when we're not idling at home or there's some boredom. It deters them from graffiti, getting into other activities. I just don't want to name the activities, and so we can all go from there. So I think it goes hand in hand in providing this great programming and looking forward and working with our community partners in building this for our youth, because those were some of the items that were cut, and we can see by the research and the numbers 1 in 5 of disconnected youth on how it has an impact in Arizona. So I thank you for that, and it's great to see that we can balance it all. These are some additional programming, but these are items that residents asked for. And we have to be clear on that. These are things that residents are asking for, and how do we do that, and how do we deliver that? And really, I feel strongly in restoring employee pay. It does affect their retirement. And I happen to be at several events this week listening to public safety telling me I'm getting ready to retire and I'm retiring with less money than I was in 2010. And that's kind of disheartening to know that they gave 30 years and they're looking at that and it affects their retirement. So I know I'll probably get hit with that or something, but I think it's important that we value our employees because we are a service. We give service. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We have this opportunity to continue with council members now giving their comments. We're obviously not voting on this. Is actually the opportunity for the public to give additional input on the budget. We'll have an opportunity to debate and vote on this in just a couple weeks. So beg your indulgence. I'll now go to members of the public that would like to provide testimony to the city management and the council on this issue. Mr. Richard Ray, do you provide testimony on the proposed city manager budget, followed by Bill Way? Followed by Gary Egan from the Phoenix Art Museum.
Good afternoon. I attended, I think I was duplicative if Jeff put it in at least in the report. I think I attended 5 or 6 of the meetings. And I heard consistently the same things, and what we now have is something that I heard from most of the people. Yes, there were a few naysayers, but for the most part, they absolutely went along with everything that Ed and Jeff have put together, and it's something that we need to do. And I can understand the arguments, and I can understand the positioning that people are making, but it's significantly important that we quit doing what we've done, that we recognize we do have the money now. Let's do what we need to do to bring the employees back so that they are restored. 3 years, I would have requested, I think I said it should have been done quicker than that. But the thing is, let's do it, and let's do this and recognize that it is the cost of doing business. And if it means that we pay more in taxes, then we pay more in taxes. The second thing is, I can understand, and I've heard and I've read the articles about the issues of the body cams, but if one entity, one event occurs during any time when we don't have those cameras, we can pay more than that, far more in lost revenue, in lost community involvement and an incredibly bad PR that we don't need. We've avoided it. We haven't had in Ferguson. We haven't had a Baltimore. We don't have those things. And yes, I understand all the arguments, but I think that this is as good as any type of preventive maintenance or preventive medicine that anybody could possibly do. So let's get it. Let's get them in there. Let's get the computer set up, and then let's do it all the way they've set it up. Incidentally, I want to congratulate Jeff and Ed on what I think is a heck of a good job in getting this thing moved forward in a way that everybody can deal with it and see it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard Ray. Bill Way from Phoenix Art Museum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good to see you.
Council members, good to see you. I support this budget, and I do so because if it does not pass, cuts would be implemented rather drastically to the Phoenix Art Museum. Specifically, cuts to security services, which would ensure a safe experience for both our staff and our visitors. Cuts to the landscape maintenance to the areas that are used for community gatherings and festivals. The Phoenix Art Museum has served this community for over 55 years. And if we don't approve this budget and cuts go in, the impact on the Phoenix Art Museum would be substantial. We would lose out in support for education, greater diversity of attendance, and community gathering spaces that are open to everyone. If this budget is not approved, we would see those drastic impacts on Phoenix Art Museum and the surrounding community. It would be cutting at the core of who we are and aspire to be as a city. It would be cutting something good about what we have built together over the last half-century. Please support this budget and help the museum continue to serve more than 250,000 visitors annually, and nearly half those visitors are through free admission. Support more than 13,000 students that visit the museum as part of the school tours, and 17,000 more that we reach out to, many in Title I schools. Provide crucial services for vulnerable populations, such as, for instance, the Alzheimer's, where each month patients and caregivers spend a full day in the museum to work on memory and build connections. And finally, keep the museum's public art space accessible to all. It doesn't require general admission. Along with providing access to public art, the Sculpture Garden also hosts numerous community events throughout the year, including culinary festivals and associations with the Hospice of the Valley. So let us keep that state safe. Let's approve this budget, and let's keep the Phoenix Art Museum doing all the things it has done so well for over 55 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill Way, for being here and your leadership on the board of the Phoenix Art Museum. Gary Egan, followed by Amada Cruz.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, Mr. Manager, I also want to support option 1, which is the city manager's budget, because option 2 through 5 imposes over $233,000 cuts directly to the Phoenix Art Museum. I see that in the budget that was proposed, that art funding going back to the general art grants was put back in, and support for public art. And as a member of serving on the Phoenix Arts and Culture Commission for 9 years with the city, I support putting those monies back in. But this would be a cut that would really impact the Phoenix Art Museum in a severe way. These are critical services. The security at the museum, not only for our visitors and our patrons, but the art that we have in the public spaces outside. You all know that building is going up on the corner of McDowell and Central and over by Alvarado. There's going to be more residents in the area. We provide a critical security element, not only to the patrons that come, but in the parking lots, we have had EMT support from our own staff that have helped critical care with people with heart attacks, people that have had injuries. So it's that force that's not only protecting the citizens of Phoenix, but also the public art that is out there. Landscaping, when we built the addition to the Phoenix Art Museum, the garden center became a public oasis. It was known as a garden oasis. It's free to the public. Anybody can come there. We have school children coming there every day. You'll see buses lined up along Central Avenue. Those children come not only engaging in the programs that Bill Way was talking about, but they're having lunch in the garden. They're playing. They're out there with parents. They're out there with their school monitors, and they're enjoying an otherwise a desert arena
a very critical, beautiful area. So I too support the city manager's budget and oppose the cuts that would be in the other options. And I'd like your consideration of that, because these are tough times for everyone, but particularly tough times for not-for-profits and particularly the arts community. So again, thank you very much for your support, Mr. Manager and council members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Egan. Mata Cruz, Director of the Phoenix Art Museum. Great to see you.
Hello, good to see you too, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you so much. This is actually my first time speaking in front of all of you. I've been here in Phoenix for about 14 months, and my theme for the museum is to actually open it up and make it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. Ironically, that's very expensive. We've done an awful lot of fundraising in the last year from the private sector to be able to have increased free admission and free programming. We have free admission every Wednesday night. We've also increased programming during that Wednesday night. We've also increased our programming during the free First Fridays. This is all fantastic, but it means we have a lot more maintenance issues. And these cuts in these other budgets, aside from option one, really do affect the maintenance. Also, security. When you have a lot more people, you actually have a lot more security issues. Let me give you an example of what happens on a Wednesday night. We have maybe 6 events happening in the museum, again, completely free of charge. Our parking lot, which we share with the Phoenix Theater, is jam-packed. We need security out there to make sure that everyone's happy when they're competing for those limited parking spots. A recent Wednesday night, I was at an event at the museum, and I turned around and I saw a group of about 14 young boys dressed quite nicely. Somebody had cared for these kids. They didn't look like they were related, though. With a man who looked about 30 years old, I turned around to him and I said, "So is this your class? What's up with this group?" And he said, "No, these are kids from a homeless shelter. These are the kids, these are the people that we are now attracting when we're open free of charge." We also have added another free day, which is our free family Sunday, which happens thanks to Discount Tire, which gave us a nice big grant so that if you're a family of 1 or a family of 12, we don't care. You walk in the museum and you are treated just like everybody else, free of charge, and we have lots of programming that happens. Lots of it happens in the garden. The garden is essentially a safe park right smack in the middle of the north end of downtown Phoenix. If we don't have the security and the help of the city, we can't provide any of these services to our growing public. One more thing, bilingual signage, bilingual programming. We're reaching out to the Latino community like never before. Again, we really can't do this unless we have the city support. So please vote for option one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cruz, and for being here and your leadership at the museum. Now I have a question for you. With Bill, Gary, and you here, who's running the museum today?
I know, lots of volunteers.
All right, next, Gail Knight, followed by Chanel Poe, followed by Ben Taylor.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council and members of City Manager staff. I just want to continue to remind everyone that when we first started this issue, it was started because a former city councilman was approached by a police officer. We had plenty of police at that time. There wasn't any issue of not having enough police, yet we still had the situation. It's turned from that situation to where we are now with the Community Police Trust Committee. The focus has been on how do we continue to build trust in the community to have everyone to feel safe. So to have the public, if they are any of them listening to this discussion today, hear that there's more of a support for increasing police and not thinking about the body cameras that keep the trust and the peace within the community, then we need to really check ourselves, because it's very important that this decision is about all the individuals of the city of Phoenix. When that situation occurred with former Councilman Johnson, this auditorium was full of individuals, not just African American, not just Hispanics, but also our Caucasian residents throughout the city of Phoenix who had experienced their own situations, even people with disabilities and our LGBT community. If we want to reassure the community that everything that is passed in policy here at the city is about the residents that live here, that pay taxes also, we must continue to be concerned about their security and their continued trust in our police. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail Knight. Chanel Poe, And then Ben Taylor, Ms. Poe, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I too would like to agree with option number 1 and also like to thank our city manager and deputy and assistant city manager for their commitment to body cameras and including the community within the process. I want to make sure that we do not stray from our priority being with body cameras, not only with bridging the gap between the community and police officers, but making sure that the new officers that we bring on board are properly trained and understand how important de-escalation and cultural conscious training plays a great role. I also want to thank you for restoring the funding for the after-school programs, which is critical for our youth, and we want to make sure that they are provided with access and opportunity so that they will not be deterred into making any type of wrong decisions. And also grateful for the grant opportunities for the arts, which plays a big role in our communities and our school districts. Again, I hope that we can take a look at the importance of having body cameras and making it back to 3 years opposed to 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Poe, for being here, your leadership on the Ball School Board. How about Ben Taylor? Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good afternoon, City Council, City Managers. I'm Benjamin Taylor. I'm an attorney here in the Valley, a member of the State Bar, member of the Maricopa County Bar Association, and also a board member of the NAACP. I was here on May 3rd, and I addressed the council. I've been to many of the community budget hearings. And like it was said earlier, no matter what race you are, no matter what religion you are, body cameras are a win-win situation for police officers and for the citizens. It protects police officers from wrongful lawsuits, as my firm does and other firms in the Valley. They unfortunately sue the city and sue police officers to get a settlement. But if you have a camera, you can see what actually happened on the camera. So that's what the basic thing is. It's about trust and trust in the community. And now looking over the budget, you see the numbers. The numbers don't lie. We have the money. We have the money to implement hiring more officers and the money to implement body cameras. So if it's a win-win situation, it makes perfect sense to go ahead and do that. Put the trust in the community, put trust in officers, and let's go ahead with the budget. Is the way it is. So over the 5 years, I think this would be a good plan. I did like the original plan, they moved faster, but if this is a compromise, I think we can all compromise. We understand compromise and trust, and let's just go ahead and vote for this budget with body cameras. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. That's all the cards I have. And I'll turn any other member of the public like to provide testimony on this proposed budget today. Obviously, I have another opportunity when it comes before this council on May 17th. That will be the vote of this city council. Now I'll turn it back to other members of the council for comments that they may have. Obviously, we'll have our full bite at the apple at our next meeting. Councilman DeCiccio, please. And then Councilman Waring, I know you had some additional
Waring
questions.
can go ahead of me.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I do still have questions. But I will say first, I thought that was handled rather oddly earlier. I didn't appreciate it at all. I was merely asking questions that did not have a partisan slant or anything else to them. I am not the guy who gets into shouting arguments up here, never have been. So I thought basically shouting me down and turning off my microphone was completely inappropriate. If you wanted me to stop asking questions, all that had to be said was Laura has to go to her child's baseball game and she needs to leave. Could you ask your questions later? And I think history has shown that's what I would have done. So I didn't appreciate that at all. Now I'll ask him my questions.
Actually, I'm going to respond to that. I appreciate that very much. As anybody who's regular watchers of this meetings, everyone on this council has a full and fair opportunity without time limit to provide any questions or comments they may have. Frankly, I thought the situation was that the nature of the question you're asking had repeated itself 3 and 4 times. I felt at that point it was necessary to see if other people had questions, knowing that I was going to come back to you if you had additional questions at the end. Members of the public were here to provide testimony. I wanted the opportunity to have them to come and provide a testimony so we could hear them. Now they can leave unless they would like to stay. But it appeared that you had a significant number of questions still to go. Again, I thought you had asked the same question 3 or 4 times, and I felt like at that point, as the chair of the meeting, it was appropriate then to extend the opportunity for other people to speak. As you know, I extended you the courtesy first. I saw your hand go up first, and I asked you to speak first. So that is the reason why I, as chair of this meeting, went about that the protocol the way I did. It had nothing to do with the substance of your comments. No one on this council ever gets cut off because of the substance of your comments, and that is simply an inaccurate insinuation. Please go ahead.
It is not for you to decide how many questions I get to ask or how I get to ask them. You have always been respectful, and I appreciate that, so I was caught more than a little bit off guard by that. But again, a simple, polite, Laura has to go, hey, Jim, could you stop? Would have been fine. Part of the reason I run for these offices is I enjoy asking these questions, and I enjoy finding out about things. I did not find my questions repetitive again. It is not for you to judge. So enough of that. I appreciate you have always been fine in the past.
Absolutely. As chair of the meeting, it is my responsibility and obligation to keep the meeting flowing, making sure everyone has a chance to participate, both members of the council and the public. If I find that one member is dominating the conversation.
Is that what you're doing right now? Because I was just going to ask my question, but you're going on and on with it.
Councilman, it's my floor. I'll hand it right back to you. I'm making the point. You challenged me and questioned my chairing of the meeting. I'm explaining to you exactly what I was doing, my rationale. It had in part had to do with the fact that Laura had to leave, but I wanted everyone in the room, all the citizens, have a full and fair opportunity to participate. Some of them have other things to do with their lives. And so if we go on and on and on, they don't have an opportunity to do that. That was my choice as chair of the meeting. It's certainly my prerogative, knowing that I was going to come back to you so that all of your questions, as long as you want to go, you'll have a full and fair opportunity to do so. As you know, I asked you to go first, not realizing it was going to be as long as it was. Councilman.
I still vehemently disagree, and I don't appreciate the way it was handled at all, and I stand by my statement. So, where were we? In all this excitement, I think I lost track myself. Wait, you were saying that the ASU study might be done in time for fiscal year next year. So the body camera program, and this actually I was right at the end when I was cut off. The body camera program will be done, you think, in time for this discussion next fiscal year.
Councilman, I don't know exactly. I'll have to get from Chief Yonner and Chief Kurtenbach the layout of that grant.
It'll certainly be further along than it is now.
Yes, it will be, absolutely.
Obviously, the
yes.
year will have passed. We'll have more clarity about the benefits of the program and so forth. It sounded rather vague. I don't think my questions are repetitive. I think they were designed to illustrate a point. We don't really know what the benefit of this could be. Certainly in a year, the technology will improve, although it sounds like it's pretty good now. You'll have more time to study what other cities are doing. In the meantime, we'll have 40 more officers on the street. Appreciate the citizens who came down and felt strongly about the body camera program. I feel equally strongly that having 40 more officers would be of greater benefit to citizens. And clearly at the budget hearings I attended, Ed and Jeff, you were each at one of them. I don't remember there being a whole lot of clarity or even much discussion about this at the ones I attended. Am I wrong in that? It sounds like maybe there was more discussion at other meetings.
My memory of the Pinnacle Peak meeting, I don't believe there was a lot of discussion about body cameras. The one thing I would just put a finer point on, I think we do know the benefits of body cameras from the work that we've done up to this point. The Department of Justice study has some specific things that it's looking for. And it's probably better to have the police department write a full report about what that's going to be, because Chief Kurtenbach specifically is our expert and can do that. But I think we do know basically the benefits of body cameras based on the experience we've had in the last 4 years with them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Waring. Councilman DeCiccio, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And before I do that, it went, Jim Waring spoke, then you spoke and made statements, Mayor. Then it went to Laura. So she wasn't given that opportunity. There was a middle intermediary there. On the body camera issue, I like body cameras, but it comes down to the list of priorities of where you want to be able to fund things, just like everything else in life. I mean, it'd be great if we could go out to dinner every night, but most people's household budgets wouldn't allow that. So I want to just ask a couple questions on that. Have any cities actually seen a drop in lawsuits with the body cameras? Is there any reported numbers anywhere out there? Because I've looked. I didn't find anything. I didn't find anyone saying, hey, look how much money we've saved.
We will get answers to that question. I don't have that off the top.
Okay. I think that would be important to know that, and there'd be an accurate study across, because right now everything's anecdotally, whether or not you save money or not. The second thing, referring back to the first study, Ed, that was conducted on the police, what was the main thing that focused on, the first study that was completed?
Councilman, I don't know specifically enough to say here. We'll
the de-escalation, the first 2 minutes. Really, that's really what it came down to, correct? With a police confrontation, the first 2 minutes matter. Where are we with the de-escalation training? Are we still continuing on? I know we had an issue early on. Has that started up again?
The Chief Yonner's commitment to training continues, and that is underway. Chief Harvey is here. I don't know if he can speak to that, if that's what we'd want to do, or we can have another
We could
time
have
where we
another,
talk
you can
more
get
about.
back, but that's already, the
police.
de-escalation training's continued on forward because we haven't voted on it.
Well, the council last year added funding to do 40 hours of training for each police officer, and the specific training was determined by Chief Yonner and his staff. And so Executive Officer Dave Harvey can address that
And
specific
it was done by an
question.
outside entity. Are we doing it internally now?
Mayor and Council, Councilman DeCiccio, I'm Executive Assistant Chief Dave Harvey. To your question regarding de-escalation training, we have been in the process of training all of our first responders. We actually have a mobile group of officers, trainers, that are going around doing briefing on our double squad days so that we can limit the amount of overtime that we're expending and completing the de-escalation training. We're about 75% through in completing that.
Councilman, I think you might be,
The
if I'm hearing you, you're
sensitivity
asking
training.
about the sensitivity training.
Both those.
Okay,
That was
that's,
my next question.
that's a different training than de-escalation. So as to the cultural sensitivity and procedural justice, well, we can address that
That was going to be
specifically,
the
Chief.
second one.
Okay.
So the other training that's been ongoing for the last year is our 40-hour module that includes cultural sensitivity training, a section of de-escalation training. That program is continuing. It's going to stop for a short period of time during the summer months and then pick back up and finish up in the fall. We have about 700 officers that still have yet to be trained.
And just so you know, too, the officers I've talked to have thought that those were the most productive things for them to be able to do right now. It's the training of what happens when you're in the middle of a confrontation, and then how do you deal with individuals that are possibly different than the police officer than themselves, and how do you deal with that? Thank you, Mayor. Then let's go into the big elephant in the room here, and it deals with the tax. If the City of Phoenix did not do this thing called maximizing the primary, and I'll explain that in a second what that means, in 2010, would there be a need for us to raise the secondary property tax today?
Mayor, Councilman, if we did not maximize the primary
Well,
levy.
that's a yes or no if you could, and then you can explain whatever you want to do and take as much time as you want.
Okay, ask me the question then in the yes and no
If
fashion.
we did not maximize the primary back in 2010, would we have the issue of needing enough money for the secondary today?
No, we'd have the issue of having cut services beyond anything we've done so far.
Perfect. Because what's happening right now is the City of Phoenix back in 2010 did a policy, started voting on a policy that, and they always use nice words. The City of Phoenix always used, like right now, the last couple of years it was called tax relief, because we didn't raise taxes on anyone. We call it tax relief. Well, it's because you try to stay within a budget is what you try to do. So back in 2010, the City of Phoenix manufactured the crisis that we're dealing with today, and they used the language of maximizing the prior, which most people don't even understand, and most elected officials couldn't have figured it out at the time either, because it's just one of those things. It sounds nice. So what they did is they shifted monies from the secondary, which pays for your capital. So essentially, take a look at your own personal home. Your own home. You're taking money away from the mortgage payment to pay so that you can eat pizza and have a couple beers at night, while you're for your family. So they're taking monies away from the mortgage and using it to pay for their operating expenses. That's what's occurred. That's what created the issues of today. That is why we are here today. The other thing that I saw, well, the City of Phoenix has plenty of money to do all these things, except it misses one thing. They didn't say anything if they raise taxes to do that. So that, and that, I was going to mention that today because I told you I was going to. But the bottom line is, if you're going to be transparent, we always talk about transparency, give both sides of the argument. Just do that. I mean, I get the idea of you're trying to sell this budget to the public, but it's not fair to the public if you're not presenting both sides of it. The additional part here deals with, let me go through this. Oh, I'm supportive of the public safety pay raises. I don't have a problem with that. The police department has been down over 600 officers. They've had to deal with Chief Garcia through what I believe to be a very horrible time, which we should have taken action early on that, but we didn't. We finally took action, but it took him to go as far as he did, as he normally would do. And then the police officers in particular are on an enormous amount of calls. The officers I talk to right now, it's very difficult for them to get to all the priority 2 and even if any of the priority 3 calls, if even they're getting to there. So I understand the stresses of making sure our police officers are compensated, and I'm fine with that. But you can't assume that every position, and I understand that's how we've done it, but that doesn't necessarily make it right. Every position is treated the same. It's not. It's not that way in life, and it doesn't have to be here either. So the City of Phoenix has enough money to do what it needs to do without raising taxes. The biggest issue I've got right here, and it can compensate our police officers fairly, is the fact that you're seeing a government out of control. That's what's happening here. Nothing here is fixing the structural deficit. Nothing here is doing that. Everything that the City of Phoenix is doing is betting on the come in the future. Now, I believe we're going to have a significant amount of tax revenues coming in. It's going to mask some of the issues we're going to have, but all it's going to take is one little downturn in the economy, just like it did back in 2007 when the market dropped 777 points in August in one day. And when you have that situation occur, then you're going to even have a worse situation in the future. So the question is, because people always ask, how would you do it? I don't want to criticize it without coming up with a way to do that. Every time we take on a City of Phoenix employee, we take on a commitment to take care of that individual for the rest of his or her life. That's just the way it is with the pension plan. In this triangle, no different than any other organization that you have out there, one person at the top, which is Ed, and then you have thousands of individuals at the bottom. We have 13,000 employees with an average cost of $110,000 per employee. It's unsustainable. But the thing is, if those dollars are not increasing every year for those employees, then it makes it harder to pay for those individuals that are on the pension plans that are out there. So every employee that we hire moving forward creates a $50-year or more commitment on behalf of the City of Phoenix. There is a way to do that. Not one person needs to lose their job. You do it through a level of attrition. Whenever new jobs open up, you find out whether the City of Phoenix should be handling that with that 50-year commitment, or you find another way, a least expensive way of handling that. Until we get to that level, we're going to continually be fighting these budget issues, these budget deficits. I think the next 2 to 3 years, the City of Phoenix is going to do well because the economy is doing well. But once that hiccup comes again, it's going to be worse than the last time because it's unsustainable moving forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Nowakowski.
Going back to that question, that yes or no question that Sal asked you, what programs would have been cut if we would have went that route?
Well, if you don't maximize the primary, and that means that you have to reduce the amount of primary property taxes. That means we have less for the general fund. So I would start with the list, and we heard the Art Museum folks talk about it because they are on the list of what the general fund provides. And so the things the general fund provides, 75% of it is police and fire and courts, and the other vast majority of it, 90% of it, includes parks, libraries, seniors, arts, all those programs. So that's where you have to go. If you're not taking in that general fund revenue, you have to go to those general fund services.
Thank you. And then back on slide 21, we talk about the employees' assistant and wellness.
Yes.
With our insurance plan that we offer right now to our police officers, doesn't that include like counseling and psychological help and all that? What's different from what we offer now in our health plan and what we're offering with the $173,000?
So that's a good question, Councilman Nowakowski. This is really focused on hiring a police psychologist to be on staff, and this is the result of a PTSD task force that the Assistant City Manager led with internal and external folks, the unions, management, and external folks, about how to increase the ability of the police department to care for our officers and our civilians who encounter traumatic incidents. And so the recommendation of that group and the chief supports having an internal psychologist available to help specific crisis needs in the moment. And then our health insurance and wellness program provides care beyond the immediate crisis.
And then the other thing is the North Mountain Public Safety Tower, and it includes the road and all that. The $715,000. I would like to actually, prior to our vote, have a tour and actually tour the road, tour the tower, and look at exactly what you're all talking about. I don't know if any of my other colleagues would like to join, but I'd like to actually see it firsthand before I vote on spending that $750,000.
We'd welcome that. The Parks Director and the Street Director have given tours, and so buckle up.
And then the other thing is, I went to about 5 budget hearings, and I heard over and over that the concern for more police officers, response times, we have so many volunteers that are out there in the community that are strong advocates for our police officers, but the lack of police officers. The other thing that I heard is that we need youth programs. There was a great program that we used to have is City Safe Streets. A young man named Raul Daniels came and told us that at one time we were the program of the country, that people would actually come across the country just to actually look at the best practices of that program. And it was basically a program to look at youth at risk and go into those areas and create a street team that young people would be involved with it, from dancing to after-school programs to Sundays in the park where there would be a DJ and a car show and all that, just keeping kids active. And this last weekend, I was at Cesar Chavez High School, and the auditorium was full, the cafeteria was full, and people were just really frustrated and angry and mad at not just the city of Phoenix, not just at the school, but at themselves. That in April we had about 7 different incidents of gangs and shootings in South Phoenix and even killings, and that we need to take a bigger role in all this. And one of the things that they were asking us is more youth programs, more workforce training, that Maricopa County is the worst in the country when it comes to young people being hired and actually employed. And that was one of the things that we heard loud and clear also in our budget hearings, that we need more workforce development, we need more after-school programs, but most important, during the summertime, how do we keep young people entertained and off the streets? When I was growing up, we used to work really close with, it was the city and the churches with, they called it back then the record hops, where they would have dances at church halls and city facilities. And there's nothing like that for young people. Going to a movie, I mean, it costs almost $50, and young people don't really have that much money to go to the movies every weekend. So we need somewhere safe where young people can hang out. The other thing that I heard loud and clear is that the libraries, the hours of our libraries are really short. That our libraries aren't just libraries anymore, they're becoming community centers. And how can we actually extend those hours and days that people can actually use during the summertime, that it's become a safe haven for a lot of our community, especially in the low-income areas, that you have a place where children can go for a couple hours and feel safe and out of the sun and somewhere cool, and where you have actually programs, workforce development, how to apply for a job and all that kind of stuff, and speakers. The other thing that we heard is, how do we create partnerships that they understand that we can't create community centers, they cost too much. But if we can partner up with the high schools, that most high schools are adjacent to a park. So how can we use each other's facilities? How can we actually provide the personnel, and the schools open up their auditoriums, they open up their weight rooms, they open up their gyms, and allow us to use them as a community center or as a gym, and that we help out with personnel or volunteers to actually run those programs, especially in the summertime. So saying all that, I'm a strong advocate for body cameras, but at the same time, I'm a strong advocate in making sure that our kids are kept busy. especially in the summertime, and that we take care of our young people also. So I really like to look into the possibility of really looking at that 140 cameras that we have in Maryville, looking at that study to see if there is a bigger trust with police officers, what kind of report came out of that? Is it successful? Isn't it successful? Because I would hate to invest $11 million or $11.4 million into a program that's not going to work, that people from the community are going to say, this isn't working, and it's a black eye on us, and we're $11 million down the road that's wasted, where we can actually invest more into workforce development and to youth programs. So I believe in body cameras. I believe that, but I like to really look at what we've done in the past, where we have a program going on for about 3 years now in Maryville. And I would like to see if it's working. And we should have some type of data. We should have some type of information. Maybe we should talk to, I know that Chief Kurtenbach was the head of that program at one time, and maybe we should sit down and really examine this before we go out there and spend those $11 million. Once again, I believe there's a lot of needs out there, but there's a lot of wants out there also. And I think that the needs that we have right now is really looking at keeping our young people busy, especially in the summertime, and how do we employ those young people? And at the same time, if this is a successful program with the body cameras, then we should invest in the body cameras. But I want to make sure that we have the data and information in front of us to make sure it's working, to make sure that that trust is coming back, it's working within the Maryville area before we invest citywide. And the other thing too is that I was told that if we do allocate these funds, that yeah, probably we can get some grants from local tribes or local foundations, but looking at the federal monies where we actually get the millions of dollars to purchase the equipment, that would no longer exist because we already budgeted, and there's other cities that right now are being asked to return some of their grant monies back because they have allocated cameras for their cities. So I want to make sure that how can we get the biggest bang for our buck and make sure we don't lose any of that federal grant in the future and actually have a great program. And the last thing is we've promised the community for training, especially cultural training for cultural diversity training within our police officers. I think we need to make sure that's top priority and we bring that up in front of the line to make sure that we hire some trainers and we start that program as soon as possible. And when we do recruit, that we recruit a diverse group of officers from females to culturally ethical ethics diversity too. And the last comment is that from 3 years ago, we're down about 700 officers. And we're looking at replacing only 500 of those officers. So we're still down from 3 years ago. So there is a need out there for more police officers, and there is a need for trust within our community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Nowakowski. Councilman Gates.
Thanks, Mayor. And Councilman Nowakowski, you're welcome in District 3 anytime. North Mountain is, it's a good road there, so I guess not good enough, but love to go up there with you. Just a couple quick questions on the property tax issue. How much will so we're talking about a 35-cent increase in the rate that's been proposed, right?
That's correct.
And how much revenue will that generate in fiscal years 16, 17?
Approximately 37 million.
Okay. And are you recommending to the council that moving forward, the council float the rate, or?
Mayor, Councilman Gates, yes, this is assuming that we're going to go to a floating rate. Now, our financial analysis, we believe, shows with the assumptions, the CFO, that 217 is the upper limit. But again, you don't know what happens to property values different from our assessment, but that's our best estimate at this point. But we would anticipate that it would need to float from that point.
But the question that's going to be put in front of this council is just for this upcoming year, right?
That's correct, Councilman Gates. Every year the council votes on the property tax rate for that specific year. The first meeting in July, that's what happens each year. So each year the council has a decision point on the property tax.
Now, you said the property tax will generate 37 million, and that's to fill a hole, a deficit that would exist based upon the promises that have been made on restorations, right? And in addition to all the other items that are in your budget.
The $37 million, it's really a two-step process. The $37 million is necessary to have the resources to pay our debt service. By doing that, that means that we don't need to use the budget surplus to do that, and therefore that budget surplus is available for the council to allocate to things like the employee pay restoration and the other programs we mentioned.
But part of that employee pay restoration is for 30 million of it is for the following year, right?
Councilman Gates, that's correct. We're pre-funding the second year of the restoration.
Okay, so only 20 million of it is actually, of the 50 million in restorations, only 20 million is for 16, 17. The other 30 million is in the future.
The other 30 million is set aside for the second year for 17, 18. Is that right, Jeff? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Any other comments? Again, this is the opportunity for the council, the city manager to present his proposal to us. We'll have a chance to vote on it in a couple weeks. Councilman Billings, any short comments? Okay.
Yeah, short. I'll
Please,
be
go ahead.
brief. I think we're on the right track. At the end of the day, it's about, in my mind, in my book, it's about keeping people safe, moving our economy forward, strengthening our neighborhoods, and doing it as fairly as possible. And I think this budget is reflective of that. There are some highlights when it comes to some of the things that we want to do, especially around tech and innovation and entrepreneurs and small business. There's some highlights when it comes to hiring first responders, and I am a strong advocate for body cams. I'm proud that the pilot of body cams over the last 2 or 3 years has been happening, of all places, Maryville. And I'm looking forward to seeing that program go citywide. You can't put a price tag on public trust. And I think it's important that we continue to move that program forward. And, you know, again, it's about strengthening our neighborhoods as well. And there are a number of things that are in this budget that are reflective of that as well. I understand that, you know, we still have more conversations to have before the council budget decision on May 17th, 2 weeks from today. And I will reserve the rest of my comments for then. Thanks, Mayor.
All right. Any other final comments? Councilman Nowakowski, please.
You know, Mayor, I just really want to thank Jeff and Ed and all the staff that worked on this budget. And I really want to thank those individuals that came out to the budget hearings that you really talked about the customer service of our employees. And when I sat there and I heard about all the great employees that we had and all the great programs that we provide within the city and how you advocated and how you fought to make sure that we continue with those programs, from seniors to youth to from our public safety to so on and so forth, it just really talks highly of our employees. And I just really feel good that we were able to keep our promise. Back in 2010, I was a part of the council, and I know that you promised 6%, and we promised to give that back when the times were good. The times were good, and we were able to make good that promise. So once again, thank you to all of our employees. Thank you to the mayor and our council here, and hopefully that we'll be able to restore that 4.2.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, final comments?
Mayor, I
Councilwoman.
I know we're in a hurry to get out of here, but I just want to tell staff, Cindy, and the union reps, thank you for negotiating and coming to a compromise. I fully believe that we needed to restore this. I believe in this budget. And I recall when we did the food tax, everybody said, oh, it'll never come off. And it did. What floats up can eventually float down, can it not? All right, I'm with you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. All right, that's the only item on today's agenda. This meeting is adjourned.